Hi, everybody. It's Ron again for another installment of looking at today's headlines. And today we have a doozy. It's rather alarming as this site, Drudge, tends to promote such headlines. So uh, as I said before, I used to like wake up in the middle of the night and look at my phone, but you don't want to look at this site because it's set up to. I mean, this site meaning Drudge because it's set up to rile you up. So here we go. So here we have Pentagon activates deployment of defense systems throughout the Middle East. You know, lots and lots of articles about this Israel-Gaza situation. This reminds me of just a while back, just a few months ago, every day, there were all these articles in the same way, but it was about Ukraine. We were supposed to be super excited about that or, agitated about it. It says U.S. holding back Israel from action against Hezbollah. You know, Hezbollah is not Hamas. Hamas is the faction that took over, had a coup and took over Gaza Strip from the Palestinian Authority in 2007. Hezbollah is the terrorist organization allied with Iran that controls the southern part of Lebanon. Of course, Lebanon in the 50s was a paradise of retirees. It was essentially like Thailand is today, and everyone thought it was a paradise that would last forever, and it's been quite the basket case for many decades now. So, the fear is, of course, is that if Israel rolls heavily into Gaza Strip to fight with Hamas, Hezbollah in solidarity will start to shell over the border, as they have often done, into northern Israel. And then, okay, here's the great. So here, nothing could be more alarming and frightening than this. And I think, see, the mainstream media would not choose an image such as this to put on the front of their newspapers because they're always trying to be very supposedly rational and reasonable. And they'd say, oh, people wouldn't be able to read the Arabic, and it is perhaps stereotypical and a negative stereotype to show this, but I suppose this is really what is going on now. So here we have our big red headlines. I hadn't clicked on these yet. Hamas maybe has chemical weapons. That's cyanide-based chemical weapons. I suppose they're easy enough to make, easier than biological. Strike head of snake Iran, of course, meaning that the fears that if Israel assumes that Iran is really pulling the strings in a direct way with this, perhaps they might bomb Iran or do something there. Now, of course, there's been a very steady stream of attacks on individuals and virus attacks from Israel against Iran for many years now, especially targeting people who scientists working on the nuclear program, important people in that program for Iran. This is, for some time now, even back in the 80s, Israel was hitting Iraq in the same way to stop them from their nuclear program, because both of these countries are, they're not just, those countries vow to wipe away Israel. So this has been a thing for some time again. Okay, I'm distracted by pop-ups from these programs trying to get me to buy things. 6 steps from World War III. I did look at this. This is, of course, you see, before Daily Mail, that's sort of rabble-rousing, right-leaning, or a populist sort of periodical. Certain The Sun is a very tabloidy sort of source as well, but there's some points here. Israel, how do we get to World War III? Israel overreacts. I don't know. I suppose they can feel very justified in reacting the way they want to. War spreads to Lebanon. This is what we'd mentioned before with the Hezbollah shooting into northern Israel. Syria and Russia team up. Syria is an implacable foe of Israel. They want their Golan Heights back. They've been rather unstable in the last 20 years, especially with the way the United States toppled the Saddam Hussein regime and destabilized that northern area of Iraq. We had the ISIS. There was a big problems there in Syria concerning that. During President Obama's terms, Russia got directly involved in Syria, which was a really an unprecedented thing in the Middle East, that the United States sort of looked the other way while Russia decided to really get involved in the Middle East. The U.S. had kind of kept Russia out for a long time. And of course, the reason for this, there's two reasons. One is during the Obama administration, people would argue this, but I think it's quite the case that Obama was sort of disinterested in foreign affairs in general. He didn't neglect them, but it wasn't a priority. However, it really wasn't a problem that the president was more disinterested in foreign affairs, and it wasn't really a problem that Russia got into the Middle East and Syria, and that's because of energy independence for the United States, in that perhaps overall the Middle East is becoming somewhat less strategically important for the United States. The United States has always protected the Middle East, not for itself, but for the global economy, to protect the oil supplies to the Far East, to China, to its allies, to Japan. Countries like China, their economy is important because they buy all the U.S. debt in bonds. They invest their money in the U.S., and so the U.S. has to keep everything going for their own house of cards to stay up. So in a way, I won't make that analogy, but it's one of these days I will, if you keep listening. I won't say what I was going to say. Iran kicks off. Number 4. We're going the 6 steps to World War III here, so buckle up. So Iran kicks up. Oh, I was going to say something about number 3. Syria and Russia team up. I just explained about how Russia's in there in Syria. Obviously, I think most people it would be assumed that Russia's in no position to get involved in this situation at this point. They've obviously, to their surprise, overextended themselves in Ukraine to the extent that probably Putin's power base, his ability to make big moves like this are constrained. He's probably holding on for dear life. Iran kicks off, meaning Iran would actively come in and hit Israel somehow. I don't see it. I think, Iran has its own fish to fry, and while that, if you assume that Iran was pulling the strings in Gaza, one would also assume that they're not interested in directly attacking Israel at this time. They'd rather do it through proxies for other goals, which the assumption was Iran was involved in Gaza to prevent the rapprochement between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Next, UK and US enter the fight. I doubt it. The UK will go if the US wants to go, I think. But the US, it's Biden, and he's somebody who's holding on perhaps to life, holding on to life with bony fingers. I don't know what to say about that. I always feel bad when I don't even want to watch Biden give a speech. I hope he's okay. But if the U.S., I don't think the U.S. is in any mood to enter the fray at all, or they would do so in a big way. The U.S. will probably try to send a lot of money. But I don't think they'll be dragged into this war. Especially, again, like I'm saying, the overall, you step back and you look at history, what's happening in the Middle East? The Middle East may become like Central Africa. Central Africa, lots of wars, lots of genocide. United States media hardly ever even reports that. And that's because it's not strategically important. The U.S. doesn't care about it. It doesn't send billions of dollars in troops into it like we do in the Middle East, like we did in Afghanistan, like we did in Iraq. Perhaps over time, because of energy independence and the lessening of the strategic importance of that area, which goes hand in hand with the American public that seems to have a lesser appetite for that sort of thing. It doesn't seem like the U.S. is going to be charging in the internationalist way it is done in the past, especially into an intractable situation. You look at the way the U.S. went into Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, for three examples. The last thing, they were all disasters, beyond disasters. And But before it was realized they were disasters, analysts would look at those countries and say, it might not be too hard to topple those regimes and get something good going. Now that sounds ridiculous, but at the time that's what they thought. But when you look at the Israel situation, nobody in their right mind would think of all these decades and decades of problems that have gone on ad nauseum. No one would imagine that you could go in and have any way to extract yourself from that situation. It would just be a quagmire. And then Saudi Arabia forced in. No, Saudi Arabia doesn't do military. They could hardly handle Yemen and the south, all those problems. They're not, they have too much money. They can throw their money around, but they're technically enemies with Israel and probably technically enemies with Iran as well. There's no... That's a fanciful thing. This is the sort of thing that the media does promote because people look at it. Look how long I looked at it. So, okay, let's move on from that. Here we're going to pass the outrageous, crazy headlines here, and let's move on to some others. Head of Detroit synagogue found stabbed to death. Can't imagine what it would be like to be Jewish now and see things like this going on in the world. Musk, the media is always kind of after him, but he's kind of a wild man. And here's Trump again, his latest woes. Rich actress splits from her husband of 45 years. Whoa. Meryl Streep is wonderful, but who cares? Jeep Wrangler, best doomsday vehicle. See, here's another sort of media headline that is, that's a cool car. It's a cool vehicle. This is another example of a headline sort of designed to fit the zeitgeist of the moment. Right now, people are concerned, they're worried, they're stressed. And so it's a good headline for people's disease at the moment. More actor strikes hit 100 days. I don't know a lot about the timing of strikes. It was a little... Must be something to it because the writer's strike went on and the actor's strike about the same time, but they seem to come during a time when maybe the economy, and especially for the media landscape of those companies, the economic results were going downhill. So it would seem to me not to be a good time to strike, I guess, or maybe it is, or maybe they're trying to get the strikes in before we have another recessionary period. I'm not exactly sure the technical idea of when you decide to strike. I don't know. Does anybody in the chat know that? Let me know. Car owners behind on payments. It's another kind of worrying thing. Makes you worry. They say that about houses too. Housing foreclosures going up. Some of these articles were on here from yesterday. This is kind of cool. I've never been to Death Valley, but wow, this is beautiful. Death Valley blooming. I guess they had some rain there. One of the harshest places on earth. I know a lot of people from Europe go over, like all those, every few years there'll be somebody from Europe who comes over to the United States and goes to Death Valley and dies out in the middle of nowhere. Everybody thinks it's just a desert. No, I've been to deserts, but it really is. It's like another planet, as I've heard, and you don't want to mess with such a harsh environment. Even short runs have major health benefits. Seems like at the bottom of this column every day there is a medical story like this. And as I explain every day, most of this is baloney or not based on good science yet, or very small subject samples in a study. What retirement on a boat or RV looks like. I know some people who have done this and who are dreaming of doing this. To me, it sounds like a nightmare. Can you imagine living in that? It looks it might for a weekend, maybe. That seems like it would be dirty and sweaty, and maybe if you're the kind of person who like doing this all the time, but I don't know. Not for me. I know a lot of people just like the idea of driving and going to a different place every night and not having to stay in a hotel, pay for a hotel, but sounds dirty and sweaty to me. Okay, Nashville police chief's son named suspect in shooting of 2 cops. This is a good example in media. A lot of things, when you write a headline for media or when you choose the news story, one of the criteria is, I guess I would say, irony, So like if there's an anti-corruption politician who's caught doing something corrupt, that's a great headline because people like that sort of irony. It doesn't matter if the people involved are not prominent or not important. So a Nashville police chief, 2 cops got shot in one place in the U.S. in Nashville, medium-sized city. Maybe not an international or national news story, but it becomes one because of the ironic aspect in that the shooter is the police chief's son. So I don't know if that's good or not. The media's always done that during my lifetime, during the latter half of the 20th century. And I do know it's enjoyable to see those. So don't we all love to see somebody who's a paragon of virtue then do something that shows that they're a hypocrite? We do, and the media knows that, and that's why headlines like this appear. Here's another one. Police officer sentenced to prison after sex assault. You wouldn't naturally assume that would happen. More about the House Speaker, and just like yesterday, I don't care. Rare case of mosquito-borne dengue diagnosed in Southern California. Interesting. Yeah, I think one of the theories about this is that climate change or warmer areas of the world will allow previously defeated or unknown diseases to enter there. So perhaps because of that, who knows? Some of these may be alarmist as well. This may be 1 in 100 billion. It may not be indicative of anything. Just to say one case is there. More about Argentina. We saw that yesterday. That Italian thing was there yesterday. All the rest of this is here. Was there yesterday. But these are our alarmist headlines. You almost feel like shouting them when you have them in these block letters, these 1930s style newspaper headlines, like those old movies from the 30s, The Public Enemy or something, and there's a newspaper and it spins up to the camera showing these big block headlines. Killer to be executed today. So those are the headlines for today. And before we go, I wanted to mention real quick, this is my new novel of Bangkok called There Are Still Unknown Places. It's the story of young men and women, foreigners who've come to Bangkok, and also ties in the country trying to live and navigate their way in this complex, modern, concrete, bewildering city that is once old and new. I hope you enjoyed it. It's on Kindle, it's on Amazon, it's on tobangkok.com. You can get it. If anybody reads it, please let me know how you liked it. So thank you very much, and I'll see you tomorrow.